Yeah, fine. So it started working. Now let's go back to the previous topic where we were in the last discussion. Yeah, so in our last discussions, we were talking about white box testing, right? So we are done with black box testing, and now uh, we are going to finish this particular white box testing as well. So initially we talked about what basically the white box testing is. Let me brush up the old concepts so that you may be able to connect what actually it is. So we said that okay, this is something which is which is the open box testing, and also it is called as your code-based testing as well. And since it's white box, so in some of the literatures you'll find that this particular part is also called as your glass box, or maybe the clear box, or maybe the transparent box. So whenever you see all these terms, you uh, should be familiar that okay, this is something which is dealing with your white box testing. So for the first time now we are going into the internals or the structures or the design or the code of the system. We'll talk about input and output as well. In some of the black box testing also we are dealing with the kind of input and the kind of output we are receiving. And in this what we do is that we'll take the help of developers as well. They'll go ahead with this white box testing in order to test the own design and the code. The logic of the program or the code is also tested for the first time in the previous cases where we were dealing with black box testing. All these things were not there. Now, what we do is we try to understand the source code and we create the test cases and we execute the test for the first time. So this particular white box testing is also called as your structural or the development testing. Further, we saw the needs of white box testing, that okay, what basically is the need of white box testing. So we said that okay, we can detect the typographical errors in this case, and then we said that okay, this is something which is a very essential stage in your software development life cycle. And we saw that in all the software development lifecycle, testing was an important phase. And in testing, we have like options like black box and white box. Now, some of the code portions may go unchecked in case of functional testing, and these portions will be executed and tested in the case of white box testing. Plus, in addition to all these things, the reason why we need to go ahead with white box testing is that we go ahead with your very crucial part, which is your code verification, right? So this is something which is very crucial in this particular part. You may be able to recall the discussions we had in this particular case. Now let's talk about black box and white box comparison. Let's quickly go through this particular thing because we have already covered it. So on one side, in case of your black box testing, we said that okay, I don't have the access to the program code, whereas in case of white box testing, I do have the access to the program code. In black box testing, I need to have the external perspective, and in case of white box testing, I need to have the knowledge of my program code. So I need to have the idea about the language in which my product is coded. And in case of black box testing, so we can have the independent programmers, and these independent programmers can apply your black box testing techniques. Whereas in case of white box testing, I need to have the testers of project team who can apply the white box testing, because now we are passing on the piece of code to these testers. Now, requirement specification is needed in case of black box testing. Here I need to have the detailed design as well, because I need to match that whether my code is analogous to the design documents or not. Right. So this kind of thing I need to take care of, especially in case of white box testing. Right. And here I need to have the implementation knowledge as well. Right. It's minor spelling mistake. Now, next is further we saw that, okay, on one side I need to have the programming language, which I don't need to know in case of black box testing, because in some cases I may go ahead with scripting and not more than that. But in case of white box testing, yes, I need to have all these details, right? The details of the programming language in which my product is coded, because I am going to look into the white box part now. That means the code which is there available to us. Mainly in case of black box testing, applicable to the higher level of testing, whereas in this I'll go ahead with unit, I'll go ahead with integration, I'll go ahead with this checkings and all that part we'll see. So this does not require the implementation knowledge, whereas in case of white box testing, I need to have the idea about how it is implemented. Okay, so I have done all these things, right? So broader classification is like white box is classified into your static and your structural testing, where static is further classified into your test checking, code walkthroughs, and code inspection. In case of structural, I have this unit or the code testing, the code coverage or the code complexity, in which we'll look into the cyclomatic complexity. In case of code coverage, I'll go ahead with statement path, condition, and your function coverage. So let's quickly go through. Okay, I have covered this particular part as well. So in case of static testing, I need to have the source code, and I don't need to have the binaries and the executables this time. And once again, since the name is static testing, so no execution of code, right? I'll not be executing any piece of code yet, although I have entered into the white box testing phase, but I'll not be executing any piece of code in this particular part as well. Now, further, we looked into the aim of static testing, where we said that, okay, all the functional requirements are met by the code or not. That's what we look into the white box testing part. And whether the code is written in accordance to the design documents or not, or the design of the product or not. So in your static testing, we go ahead with your test checking, we go ahead with code walkthroughs, we go ahead with code reviews, we go ahead with code inspection as well. Now, next is what we do is that we go ahead with initially the static testing by humans, and the reason being that humans can find errors that the computers cannot find, and multiple humans will be providing several perspective as well. Uh, in that case, I think more the people involved in human testing, more perspective will be getting from them. So a human evaluation can compare the code against the specification much more thoroughly as compared to other cases. It can detect the multiple defects at one go. Yes, in one go. See, normally if you suppose you're executing a piece of code, right, then we see some errors, right? Is as far as your static testing is concerned, based on the previous experience of the test managers, I'll be able to detect the multiple defects at one go, and this further reduces the inline or the downstream pressure as well, because at the very initial, without executing the piece of codes, we have gone through this. Okay, we have covered this particular part as well. So in test checking, let me quickly go through this. In test checking, what we do is we verify the code for the correctness, we compare the code for the design or the specification, and just before the compiling and execution, we are going ahead with this kind of tests, right? So what we are doing is that just before the compilation process, I am going ahead with this kind of testing. So some of the advantage of test checking are like developer is the checker who knows this particular uh, code because it is written by him or her only. So I'm very much familiar to that programming language, and this is something which is very quick, and of course it is like very inexpensive, like because developer will be the one who is sitting. We have already built. We went for billing against him, so that particular part is taken care of. Then some of the disadvantages are like sometimes we come across a situation where the coder or the developer will say that, okay, this is the code which I have come up with and it does not contain any errors and it should work flawlessly. So in that case, developer is not the best person to detect the errors or some issues associated with the code. And this results into the inconsistent approach, right? And obviously, since developer is the only one, so it is like a single person or the developer dependent approach. I'm not getting any external viewpoint as well in this one. Yeah, next is your code walkthrough. So what we do is we have like instead of developer only, I have a group who is going to go through this particular piece of code and will be giving some reviews. So once again, since a group is involved, I'll be getting multiple perspective in this case, and the group raises the questions for these coders, and coder has to respond back to all the queries or the questions raised by uh, the group, and the coder needs to justify the reason or the rationale behind using some functions or maybe adding a piece of code or a code snippet. Yeah, next is your code review, which is also known as your peer review. So if you see this particular term, then you get an idea, okay, there is something which is a code review only. So this is something which is a systematic examination of the source code, and it checks the source code for compliance with a predefined set of rules or best practices. Where if a company is following several certain standards, so the company looks into the fact that whether the supplied piece of code is analogous to those or in line with the rules or the procedures specified in those set of rules or not. So I've added this particular definition from CMM, which is your capability maturity model, which talks about a disciplined engineering practice for detecting and correcting defects in software artifacts and preventing their leakage in the field operations. Next is your code inspection. So this particular thing is also called as your FAGAN inspection. So whenever you see this, don't get confused. And what happens is that in this particular thing, I have like very high degree of formalism, and this will be done after basic desk checking and walkthroughs are done by the coder. So as compared to the previous approaches, this is something which is much more formal in nature. Now, this is what is done in case of FAGAN inspection. We go ahead with planning, overview, preparation, then we meet, we rework, we follow up. In case of reworking, once again, I'm going back to the planning phase and going ahead with this. So these are the people who are involved in your code inspection. I have a coder, I have a moderator, I have the inspector, and the scribe, the person who is responsible for jotting down all the details or the inputs given by the inspectors. Moderator will be the one who will be calling for this particular meeting, and this thing is called as your defect logging meeting, where assembling the inspection team for the inspection meeting is done. Yeah, there are some challenges in formal inspection. So one of the challenges that finding a common slot, which is free for all, is very tedious task. And of course, it becomes a time-consuming process as well, because I need to identify the free slot. Then I need to, book a room for this particular process. Then jotting down the details, right? So all those minute details. So this thing becomes a very time-consuming process. Logistics and scheduling can be an issue since several people are involved, and it is not always possible to go through every line of code practically. Because just remember, if I have this much piece size of code, then going through each and every line of code is practically not possible. Now, this is something which is a drawback of static checking, right? Because customer has required, customer has asked for something else, that I need to have a product which has one trunk, has one leg, sorry, 4 legs and should carry your passenger and cargo. Both should be available in black in color, should be herbivore. And what I'm getting is this is my solution. It has like everything, right? One trunk, 4 legs, can carry load and passenger, both black in color. Should be herbivorous, and here I have also one additional benefit as well. But in actual, this is not actually the thing which the client was looking for. So that is a major drawback of your static checking, that I don't get what I'm looking for. Next is your structural testing. So what we do is we look for the code structure and the internal design. And this time my code is actually run by computers. I guess I have to start from here. Previously, all the topics I've covered. In order to bridge the gap between the previous classes and today, I thought of covering that particular portion. So in this particular thing, we are going to look for the code coverage. We are going to look for statement coverage, path coverage, condition and function coverage. Then we'll talk about your functional testing, and then we'll look into your code complexity, where we have to focus on cyclomatic complexity. That means how to calculate it. And before that, we in order to calculate the cyclomatic complexity, we'll talk about CFGs. CFGs stands for your control flow graph. So from the piece of code, I'll come up with the control flow graph, and from there I'll calculate the cyclomatic complexity. Now, let's talk about the logic coverage criteria, where I have this statement coverage, I have decision or branch coverage, I have condition coverage, or you can call it decision or condition coverage, combined multiple condition coverage, and your function coverage. So to start with, what we have is, let's take a piece of code. I've written this small piece of code in C++. Right, a simple code. In order, we'll use the same piece of code for all the examples so that it becomes very handy. I'm giving you just 1 minute to go through this particular piece of code and what actually it is doing, and then we'll talk about all the things which we are going to do. So let's talk about statement coverage, and for that, what we are going to do is we are going to take this particular code snippet, go through this particular code snippet for 1 minute, and then we'll have a discussion on it. I'm giving you 1 minute for going through this particular code snippet. Yeah, so what this particular piece of code is doing is it is taking these two inputs, right? I could have, I could have made it in this format as well in order to uh, get two values, but it's okay. To enhance the readability, I've done this. So then we are checking that if this thing is not equal, that means x is not equal to y, then if x is greater than y, reduce this. That means go ahead with subtracting y from x, or else subtract x from y. If this holds true, this holds true, get inside this, go ahead with this, and then go ahead with this particular output. Here also I could have reduced into this, so that remains still the same. In a single line I could have added. That particular point is understood. Now, let's talk about the statement coverage, right? So statement coverage is if you go back to the previous slides, we were talking about, code coverage, where we are going to go ahead with statement coverage. So when we talk about your code coverage, so basically this code coverage from the title itself is giving you an idea that I'm going to cover the code. So this is basically a measure which describes the degree of which the source code of the program has been tested. And it is one of the form of white box testing which finds the area of the program not exercised by a set of test cases. And this particular thing creates some test cases to increase the coverage and determine the quantitative measure of code coverage. So in most of the code coverage systems, what we do is we gather information about the running program. That means, see, to the extent with which I can cover the code, that particular part is your code coverage. So statement coverage is one of the techniques. So let's quickly see how it can be done. Now, when we talk about statement coverage, the assumption is that if all the statements of the module are executed, every error will be notified, right? So the statement coverage is a kind of white box testing where the idea is that whether the code written is qualitative or whether it does what is expected to be done. And it is checked in two conditions. It is like verified for every line of statements. For example, I'll shoot some data where I'll aim to execute all the lines of code at least once. So statement coverage is one of the widely used software testing and a simple one. It like a very simple one. And this technique involves execution of all the statements of the source code at least once. That's what I'm emphasizing. And it is used to calculate the total number of executed statements in the source code out of the total statements present in the source code. So the statement coverage derives the scenario of test cases under the white box process, which is based upon the structure of the code. Now, let's take the same example where what we are trying to do is that I have this particular piece of code. So when I'm giving a test case as x equals to y equals to a, right, a can be anywhere. So we are getting a, we are getting a, and here it goes ahead with the false one. So I'm simply displaying this. So I'm able to execute these lines of code. I've got the idea about the piece of code as well. Now, next is I'm going ahead with a case where I'm giving test x equals to a and x equals to b. So this test case 3 and 4 are nothing but a kind of test case 2a and 2b, where in one situation a will be greater than b and in other situation b will be greater than a, right, where these a and b are any numbers. Now if I'm going ahead with this, which is 2a or considered as test case 3, so I'm able to enter into this, right? I've given a value a, I've given a value b, I've this made this particular thing as true. I've entered it, I went for this, I went for this, I went for this, and I went for this, right? And in the next part, what I can do is when I'm going ahead with this, uh, let me go ahead with this, right? So in this particular part, once again, I've given a value a, I've given a value b, this is making us true, I went for this particular thing, I went for this, I went for this, I went for this. So in some sense, I've executed each and every line of code once, at least once, in order to uncover the difference. Right. The idea is that if all the statements of the module are executed once, every error will be notified. This is something which is the assumption for this statement coverage. Right. Now, any doubts in this particular discussion? Any doubts in this particular discussion? Yes or no? I hope you are with me in this particular discussion, or you have switched on switched off your mics. Okay, fine. Accept me. So, Aditi, I can see some people are active. Further, this was about yeah, Nisha, Mohit. Okay, I can see some active people sitting in my class today. So now this was about statement coverage. Now let's look into the decision coverage. Now, you might have got some idea that okay, previously, we were saying that okay, this is the idea that every statement, if I can execute, I'll be able to uncover the defects. Now, the problem is that in case of large programs, right, it is practically impossible to execute each and every line of code. That becomes a time-consuming process. So in that case, what we do is we go ahead with decision coverage. So that means the outcomes of the decisions are tested. So in the decision coverage, the aim is to ensure that each one of the possible branch from each decision is executed at least once, and thereby ensuring that all reachable code is executed. So in this particular thing, in this particular piece of code, what I see is that I am looking for the decisions, right? Where the decisions are being taken, right? These things. So definitely I'll try to fire the values in a way that these things get executed at least once. So what I'm trying to do is I'm going ahead with these two for this. In fact, anyone would have served the purpose, and these two for this and this respectively. Right. In this way, I'm testing the decisions, or I'm covering the decisions which are there in the program. Getting this part or not? Another very simple concept. Getting this part or not? Yes or no? See, eventually, I took a very small example, right? The example is so test case one is not necessary. Okay, see, my idea is to check the decisions, right? If I'm firing a simple one out of one, I'm able to evaluate it. But to be on the safer side, I went for firing two values just to check that okay, in both the cases it is working or not. For example, let's say here by mistake I would have missed this if the coder missed this particular part. Now this is working fine, but in actual my program is not giving me the desired results. For that sake, I'm firing this particular test case as well. And once again, here A and B are values, right? So here, let's say, in the next case, X becomes A and your Y becomes B, right? That's how we are testing it, right? So that's how we go ahead with decision coverage. So when we talk about decision coverage, so another, a white box testing approach, which is giving the decision coverage to the Boolean values. Every time I'm looking for a true or false or a 0 or 1. So this technique, reports true and false outcomes of Boolean expressions, right? I'm looking for true or false, or you can call it as 0 or 1 or 1 or 0 or anything. So whenever there is a possibility of two or more outcomes from the statements, for example, I have, let's say I have a do while, or I have like if, right? I have like if else, right? If suppose I'm adding if, so if else is obviously I'm looking for. So this is considered as the decision points, right? So these things are your decision points. And I need to execute these particular points because these are the places where I'll see some outcomes, and this outcome can be true or false. So decision coverage covers like all possible outcomes of each and every Boolean condition of the code, and this can be once again checked by control flow graph or control flow chart that I'll explain you in another few slides. And generally, a decision point has like two decision values. One is like true, another one is false, and that's why most of the time the total number of the outcome is two. The percentage of decision coverage can be found by dividing the number of exercised outcome with the total outcomes, and you can multiply it by 100. So it's like a very simple one, very simple thing to go ahead with. In fact, if you compare the previous statement coverage with this particular thing, then what we see is that I don't need to have uh, the statement coverage, because this previously I need to work a lot. This is something which is a time consuming process, right? The statement coverage, and as compared to this statement coverage, decision coverage has reduced my task considerably, right? This particular thing has reduced my task considerably. Now next is your
Well,
yeah, Aditi, yeah.
so would it be correct to say that decision coverage is basically a lower level decision table, in that we made the test, but it was on a higher level. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
right. So there we were going ahead with the black box testing, and in some sense, we are going ahead with this particular part by looking at the piece of code. Whereas in case of your decision tables, we were looking into the complex logic. So there we were dealing with inputs, because we are not sure about the internals of the system, but the idea remains the same. Of course, you are able to connect it very correctly, but the only problem is that there we were dealing with black box testing, and we were looking into the complicated logic of the inputs. Here we are looking into the actual decisions which are there in the piece of code. These are some minor but the major differences between the decision coverage and your decision table based testing.
okay, so thank you.
Okay. Any other doubt in this decision coverage? Anyone else having any other doubt? No? Okay. Okay. Then let's go to the next one. This is condition coverage. Now, previously we were looking into the decision. Now we are looking into the condition, right? So each condition in a decision takes on possible outcomes, right? Don't get confused with this condition, decision, and all, right? Here we were talking about decision coverage. We are looking into the condition coverage. So in this particular part, what we see is that I have a condition where multiple decisions we are taking, right? And here what we are looking is we are looking into the fact that let's take this particular example where this I is less than or equals to 5, and here j is less than or equals to this count. Now here we are looking to two things, right? So this is something which is the second phase of the condition coverage. What we are saying is that I have a test case one where I'm going ahead with this kind of thing, and in this case 2, I'm going ahead with this kind of thing where here I went for true and true, here I went for true and false. The reason being, the example which I took has this. So if I'm making this particular part as false, then I don't need to look into this particular part. Getting my point or not? Yes or no? Getting this particular point or not? Yeah, so Jan said yes. The reason being, if this is false, I don't need to look into the other part, right? This AND operation, right? If X and Y I have, I know if this holds false, so the entire thing will automatically be false, irrespective of whether Y is true or not. Right? Y is true or not, irrespective of this fact. That's why for condition coverage, I went for these two options. If this is false, automatically the entire content inside this while is going to be false. If the first thing is false. Right. So this is like decision coverage. Let's focus on this. Once again, here, if suppose I have A and B, right, what I'm trying to do is I'm looking for this A is true, B is false. If A is false, B is true, then this is serving the same purpose that okay, the entire thing is becoming false. I hope you are getting this particular part. Yes or no? Okay, okay. Now, then we have like multiple condition coverage. So what we have is like the condition coverage fails to exercise all the conditions and all combination of the different multiple conditions. So if suppose I have like several conditions one after the other, right? So if this and this or this and this, so I have to look for all these factors. I have to look for all the permutations and combinations, and once again I have to take a call that okay, there is an ampersand between these two, there is an and between these two, but here it is or. So in that case, I have to look for the combinations of these two in order to reduce the particular test cases. Now, further, next is your function coverage. Now, I'm reducing my efforts drastically this time. So what we have is like each function will form a logical unit. Every function or every function which is added in your code is for some purpose. Whether let's say I have a function to add, right? I have a function to subtract, I have a function to multiply, so I have a function to divide. So all these functions have a logical unit. All these functions have a special purpose. And it becomes very easy to identify the functions, and hence it becomes very easy to write the test cases for the functions. See, for any piece of code, I need to have tons of lines, and in that, let's say I have like 1 lakh lines of code, and in that case, in 1 lakh lines of code, I may only have 1,000 or maybe 500 or maybe 200 functions, or even less than that. Right? In that case, checking the function, identifying the function is easier. So I'll be able to identify the functions easily because it has some names. So what we say is that 100% function coverage is possible, whereas 100% code coverage is not possible. Right? Like in 1 lakh lines of code, or maybe 1,000 kilo LOCs I have. In that case, I'll have I can count the functions, I can count the number of functions, but I cannot count the number of uh, lines of code. All right, in that case, I'll be able to identify that, okay, let's see, these many functions are there, let's evaluate these functions. If the working of functions is correct, then we assume that, okay, the entire code is fine. So functions have more logical mapping to requirements. And my function coverage provides a natural transition to black box testing. Right, functions have more logical mappings to requirements, and function coverage provides a natural transition to black box testing. Yeah, so next is your unit or functional testing. So this is something which is, the done initially it is done by the developer only, and it removes some of the obvious errors, preferably done before the expensive checks, because then only we'll move to the next phase. And what we do is we build the debug versions for it. I can go through an IDE for it, and I can either debug or I can test at the developer's end only. Okay. Any doubts up till now? Any doubts up till now? I hope you people are here. Yeah, fine. So what we are going to do is we will start this code complexity in our next class, and we'll finish it there only. We'll talk about some basic definitions of graphs. We'll look into the code complexity. We'll look into the control flow graphs, and then we'll evaluate all these things. All these things we'll be doing in our next class. So any doubts, if you have, we can clarify, we can have the discussion, or else we are good for today.